Today, we're presenting how childhood trauma shapes our present reality. We're joined by Navroop Sood. So in this session, we're going to explore what impacts that childhood trauma has on one's worldview, self-belief, close relationships, work, and finances. So first of all, let me tell you a little bit about Navroop. She's a trauma-informed EMDR therapist, a certified brain spotter, and a TRE provider. She has her private practice in Singapore called Heal with Nav. Navroop is a person-centric and passionate mental health advocate, and she successfully hosted her webinar series to destigmatize mental health and normalize the need for therapy. Navroop believes that trauma, early attachment wounds, and absence of secure relationships are at the root of every emotional struggle. Therefore, addressing such trauma is certain to provide sustainable results for people. She helps to empower people to live a more integrated life full of joy and vitality. There's also going to be a 15-minute Q&A at the end where you can ask questions. All right, now without any further ado, I'll turn it over to Navroop.
Yeah, thank you, Winnie. Thank you so much for this opportunity to present this wonderful topic, how childhood trauma shapes our present reality. I'm honored and I'm thankful to all the participants for joining us today. I know it is a very intriguing topic and none of us, believe me, none of us has escaped trauma in our lives. So somehow trauma has shaped us in some way. And today we are going to discuss how that childhood trauma has shaped our present reality and particularly has become our driver and influencer in our life. So before we start, I want to give one disclaimer because we are going to discuss some childhood trauma, some incidents. It may be triggering for you. So anytime you feel triggered during the session, feel free to leave the session. You may put it on mute and you may just see the slides if you feel like, or you can send a message to Winnie, that probably private message to Winnie, that we want, I'm feeling dysregulated and we want some kind of grounding exercise towards the end of the session. So if we receive a lot of messages like that in the personal DM to Winnie, we are going to do some grounding exercise at the end of the session, which I'm going to be leading. So without further ado, I'm going to start how childhood trauma shapes our present reality. And I know each one of us is very excited to know about it. But before I jump into that, I actually want to show you a small clipping, a small movie, which might explain the point which I'm going to put across today. Can you hear it? Can you hear the sound?
It's time now, everyone. We're going to do the Compassion Trauma Circle. Is everyone ready to face their past with compassion? Is that a yes? Yeah. While you were growing up, during your first 18 years of life, if a parent or other adult in the household often or very often would swear at you, insult you, put you down, or humiliate you, step inside the circle. If a parent or other adult in the household often or very often pushed, grabbed, slapped, or threw something at you, step inside the circle. If a parent or other adult in the household often or very often ever hit you so hard that you had marks or were injured.
Sorry.
It's time now, everyone. We're going to do the Compassion Trauma Circle. Is everyone ready to face their past with compassion? Is that a yes? Yeah. While you were growing up, during your first 18 years of life, if a parent or other adult in the household often or very often would swear at you, insult you, put you down, or humiliate you, step inside the circle. If a parent or other adult in the household often or very often pushed, grabbed, slapped, or threw something at you, step inside the circle. If a parent or other adult in the household often or very often ever hit you so hard that you had marks or were injured, step inside the circle. If you often felt that no one in your family loved you or thought you were important or special, step inside the circle. If your family lived in extreme poverty, step inside the circle. Step inside the circle. Step inside the circle. Step inside the circle.
There is no shame. There is no shame. There is no shame.
So what we saw just now, it's not true only for the prisoners, but for most of us. Most of us have gone through something in our lives which we maybe not be consciously or unconsciously aware of, but it's there in our body because our body keeps the scores. So there is no such thing as overreacting. It's just that what you're reacting to may not be in front of you, but it's what's behind you. So as you see in this cartoon, it depicts, the heart is carrying the past trauma. And when there is addition to that pile with pandemic, bad news, stress, and a minor inconvenience can lead to a trigger. And what people see is overreaction. What people see is exaggerated responses, but it's actually your past playing up in the present. So we may not be aware of that fact also, but still we are being, played by the past strings, which is still playing on us. So what is trauma? It's not, as we all know, sometimes when we talk about trauma, it's all the big events, maybe rape, maybe accident, maybe parental divorce, all these kind of things, or some accidents, some natural calamity. But Gabor Mate has defined trauma is not just some bad event, but also of absence of those good events which should have happened and didn't happen during your childhood. So, when we talk about developmental trauma, what we want to talk about is, as a child, you have some needs which are to be seen, to be heard, to be nurtured, to be supported, to be cared. But if those needs are not constantly met in a consistent way and also in a nurturing way, what you experience is trauma. So we can attribute it to neglect, loss of a parent, serious childhood illness, maybe a learning disability, too many siblings where parents can't, give that attention to the child. Parents are detached emotionally, unavailable, or they have their own trauma, ongoing trauma. They have their own stresses, financial stresses. It could be one of those or a combination of those. And we all know about ACEs now. ACEs stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. This involves abuse, neglect, domestic violence. You can go online and do that ACEs quiz, and you will find out, these adverse childhood experiences. There are 10 questions. A score of 1 to 3 on ACEs, it promotes intermediate stress, intermediate kind of toxic stress in you. But if the score of ACEs is more than 3 and it goes till 10, it shows the possibility of toxic stress, high toxic stress in the body, in the system, emotionally and physically. And now, our latest research in 2020 has talked about ABES also, which is adverse baby experiences. And what is adverse baby experiences? These are the experience which the mother is experiencing since the time of conception. Her environment, what is the environment stressful? What is her diet intake? What are her finances? What's keeping her busy? Is she happy about the pregnancy? Is she not happy about the pregnancy? So all those environmental stresses actually shapes the life experiences of the baby within the womb also. Because for a child, for a baby, for a fetal, mother is the environment. So early in life, even when a child is conceived, since that time, the child is absorbing everything which is coming in the environment and shaping the life experiences for himself. So adverse baby experiences can also contribute to childhood trauma. So when we do therapy, sometimes people are not able to verbalize that. We call it pre-verbalizing trauma or maybe perinatal trauma. So, but it can also be addressed in therapy. So I want to make it a point that developmental trauma also includes ACEs and ABIS, which is adverse childhood experiences from the age of 0 to 18 years, adverse baby experiences, which an individual may experience as a baby since the time of conception, since the time the child is conceived in mother's womb till early 3 years. And we have to understand that most of the trauma is relational. My mom said something to me and that thing doesn't go out of my brain and it's still driving me till today. So whatever is happening in our lives is mostly relational. It's not something only an event is happening. Whatever is happening in context of a relationship is a relational trauma. And we all are social animals. We have that need for connection. We have that intrinsic need for connection, intrinsic need to be loved, intrinsic need to feel, belong, to feel a part of some community or with our friends. So whenever that need is not met in a proper way, there is relational trauma. So trauma is not just some bad event, some big event happening in our life, but absence of all the good nurturing energies and events which should have happened but didn't happen. And that leads to a child in a wound in a child, a traumatized child. So why learning about childhood trauma is important? Why this fuss? Why we are talking about it today at all? Because our life experiences shape the way our key systems in our brain organize and function, especially our nervous and regulatory responses. For instance, if a child is crying for milk, is hungry and is constantly crying, and mother is busy for whatever XYZ reason and cannot come and pick up the baby would not know what love and nurturance mean. And that could be the foundation for him to not be able to self-regulate himself later in life. So when a problem comes in life, he's not able to regulate himself because he only knows how to cry. What should have happened in that case was a mother comes, holds the child, soothes the child, rocks the child, feeds the child, and the child feels happy and contented. And that's how slowly and gradually child develops self-regulatory mechanism in themselves. But it starts from co-regulation. When a mother is grounded and present and can give that nurturance to the child also feels grounded. The nervous system of the child mirrors the nervous system of the mother. But if mother in herself is not grounded and dysregulated, it gets transferred to the child. So starting in the womb, the developing brain stores part of our life experiences, as I mentioned to you earlier. And when the brain starts to store part of our life experiences, I want to share one of my clients' case here, confidentiality ensured. She actually mentioned that, during intimate relations, whenever there is a sudden change in the position, she feels scared. She was not able to understand why. She loves her husband. Everything is going fine and everything is good. But that position was triggering and she will freeze. And during our therapy sessions, when we traced it back, we found that her father actually slammed the baby on the bed when she was a baby. And the baby actually registered all those information in her body in that system. So the baby may not be able to verbalize it, but the body stores the feeling. So similarly, now in adulthood, if the similar motion happens, if a similar thing happens, even in the safe context, the person feels triggered and they may not be able to relate it also and consciously be aware of what's happening, what's going wrong. but something is happening, and that's why we need to get it addressed. So anything which triggers us actually reveals a part of something in our past which needs to be worked upon, which needs to be healed. So with this, I want to tell you that first 9 months, development is actually explosive. And when we say explosive, reaching a rate of 20,000 neurons every single second in comparison to adult, on a good day, we may create only 700 new neurons. So you see how big a contrast it is. So babies' brains at that time are like sponges. They absorb everything from the environment. You know, there are times when we say, oh, he's just a baby. He doesn't understand. And parents curse and fight in front of the baby. The baby is crying, and they don't feel that there is any need to, to soothe or calm the baby, because baby doesn't understand anyway anything. But babies soak everything from their environment. They can pick up the vibe of the environment also. So if there is a fighting parent, or if they're a parent who is crying, sad, or they witness a parent being domestically abused, or if there is physical violence, they can absorb. Their body stores that information. So anything that reminds them of that tone in adulthood, anything that reminds of that, maybe fragrance or smell or the vibe of the atmosphere when it was happening, they get triggered without even their conscious awareness. So that's what happens when babies are exposed to these kind of experiences, negative experiences, early childhood experiences, which are not very good for their psyche. So why learning about childhood trauma is also important, because brain starts to create complex memories through these external senses of sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch, along with what is going on inside their body also. So if they are thirsty, whether they are being fed with water, whether they have food to eat, whether they are able to breathe properly, or their breath is suffocated. So all these connections, the baby's brain is trying to make all these connections, and thereby a personal catalog. They make their own personal catalog, which becomes the foundation for their worldview. How they are going to view the world, whether this sound is safe, whether this smell is safe, whether this person is safe, whether this touch is safe. So babies try to make sense of everything, and very early on in life, they have their own personal catalog of experiences, which they keep on updating and changing as they move forward. But the beliefs formed during this time will not change on its own unless it is challenged, either in therapy session, or the implicit is made explicit, or we get the release of that stuck energy from their body out. So as it is written here, for one child, eye contact may mean I care for you, while for another child, it may mean I'm about to yell at you. So constantly, babies and the children, they are taking note of it and making their personal catalog. Oh, this particular look from my mom means that she's going to yell at me and I'm in trouble. And that's how they pick up everything, They pick up and they modify their behavior accordingly. They keep on changing, they keep on regulating their behavior so as to survive, so as to not bring threat upon them, and so as to be easy in their lives, and they just want to survive. Otherwise, how else a baby would survive if the baby is going to confront it? So it wires our brain for how we view ourselves, those life experiences, our worldview, and consequently our behaviors and actions. So we all know first impression when we meet someone. I'm sure when you saw me on screen, there would be some kind of feelings in you which would have come up. Probably she is a therapist, or is she a therapist? Oh, what is she going to talk? Oh, her accent is like this, or her English is like this, or probably, oh my gosh, she messed up the video. Whatever, either good, bad, neutral. It all depends on how we have been raised up all this while, and also what our beliefs are. So something in me could be triggering for you, something in me could be soothing for you also. So it depends entirely on different persons and how their personal brain catalog is formed. So our brain catalogs vast amount of inputs from our family, community, culture, along with what is presented to us in media. What are we bombarded to? And now, especially in COVID situation, what kind of media exposure we get, or from Afghanistan, this Taliban situation, we see all this is affecting us. And how much it's going to affect us is again dependent on how much resiliency I have, which again boils down to the fact how I was nurtured as a child, whether I have those self-regulatory capacities or I do not have those self-regulatory capacities at the moment. So anything, may seem worse than it is in the present moment because I may not have any kind of regulatory system in me which is able to adapt it and maneuver my way out of it. I'm not able to self-soothe myself. So for one person, the reaction may be knee-jerk, and for another, it may be a calm, thought of mindful response. It all depends on how our beliefs are shaped, and our beliefs are shaped via our childhood experiences. So it shapes our attachment style. When we talk about attachment style, it is so very important. What is our attachment style? Because our attachment style is actually going to decide how we are going to behave in relationships, how we are going to show up in life. So when we talk about attachment styles, even choosing our partner, addictions, we all look for secure relationships. If your mother was grounded, if your primary caregivers, your parents were grounded, you would have developed most likely a secure attachment style. When we say secure attachment style, which means you can stand up for yourself, you have healthy boundaries, you feel safe, you display appropriate behaviors, and you feel confident in relationships, and you're responsive. Whereas if your caregivers were going through their own stuff and they were anxious, sometimes they were available, sometimes they were not available, you are most likely to develop anxious attachment style. And when we say anxious attachment style, you become more clingy. You try to hold on to the person, you fear rejection, you fear that the person may be gone, and you constantly seek reassurance. There is another attachment style, which is dismissive. In dismissive, you struggle with closeness. The more a person comes closer to you, you start avoiding them. So I reject you before you reject me because I don't want to be vulnerable. That's another style. And again, the last one is fearful. You fear connections. You are either emotionally hot or cold, or you may have poor boundaries. So these kind of stuff happens. The attachment style is dependent on how secure your relationship was with your caregivers, whether your caregivers were able to fulfill all your childhood needs in a regulated way, in an effective way. It's not saying that they have to provide you all kind of finances or you're born with gold spoon or a silver spoon. I'm not saying that. It's not about finances. It's about emotional bonding. It's about that warmth, that touch, that nurturance, that feeling that you are my baby and I care for you. And you don't have to figure it out on your own. So all these things decide your attachment style. And early attachment style, if it is damaged because the caregiver was too busy, has his or her own problems, or maybe we're going through something, what happens is that early attachment gets damaged. When your parents' help does not or cannot come easily, like the child needs something, but the help is not provided. And suppose a father says, okay, I'm going to come to your school for a soccer play. One time, and he calls you up, oh, sorry, son, I am not able to come. Okay, once it happens, it's fine. Second time, third time, every time you want your dad to come along to your parent-teacher meeting or for a soccer play, he's not available. So the attachment is disrupted. You cannot. The more I become vulnerable, the more I get hurt. So next time, I'm not going to put any expectation on anyone. Or the help that arrives is sporadic or inconsistent. Sometimes they're there for you, sometimes they're not there for you, and you can't even predict when they will be there for you and when they will not be there for you. Help arrives angry or agitated. I often ask my clients, picture this, you are sitting, you're a baby, 6 months old, 10 months, 12 months, whatever you want to picture, and you are sitting at the cabin near the cabinet of your kitchen, and you opened up everything from the cabinet, you pulled out all the boxes, you've thrown everything out, the flour is on the floor, and everything is scattered and messed up. And picture your mom coming in. What image comes to your mind? Is your mom going to scold you and say, what the hell? What did you do? You created mess for me and now I have to clean it up all. Or your mother said, oh, my baby, you are being very curious here. I understand that you want to come to kitchen and see everything out here. Chances are the first one, right? So the thing is, when the help arrives angry or agitated, I'm not saying that everything is gonna be like this. I'm not blaming anybody. I'm not blaming our parents. But all the events, they need to have a proper starting, ending, and a proper closure. If the closure is mostly love and nurturance, the likelihood of that memory being stored as a trauma memory is zero. It will not be stored as a trauma memory because that was the moment of love and nurturance and warmth, and there is a proper closure. But if the closure is somewhere which is disrupted, it is going to be stored as a trauma memory. Another example that comes to my mind is there's this client who reached out to me because she wanted to have a good relationship with her mother. She's in her early 20s and her mother runs a home bakery and she wants to help her in the home bakery business, but she's unable to. Somehow she finds herself frozen and she doesn't want to, she feels scared, and and she has that guilt, that Asian guilt. I'm not able to help my mom. My mom is working very hard and I'm not able to help her. I want to help her. I want to improve my relationship. And while we were in the therapy, we recognized, once she was 6 years old, that was the first time she wanted to microwave her food. That was her favorite pre-packed food, and she was trying to heat it. And she was very happy that today I'm going to heat this pre-packed food and I'm going to eat it. And while she was doing that, she opened the microwave and without using the gloves, she was about to pick up the bowl and the bowl dropped. When the bowl dropped, the mother came running to the kitchen and she said, "You cannot do anything properly." And she shouted at her. The poor 7-year-old girl, she left everything there and she came to the room and she cried, cried, cried. And while she was recalling that incident, she told me, "Navroop, that day I didn't eat my lunch. I just let it be." But that was the root of the problem. She couldn't, even if she wants to be close to her mom, she was not being able to. So your parents didn't do anything deliberately, but they didn't know any better. So with that kind of compassion for them also, we move forward. Sometimes they can't help it. Sometimes they lacked resources. Sometimes they lacked the awareness, the knowledge, and sometimes they were too stuck in their own messiness. So also childhood trauma can include early medical trauma. So, maybe you met with an accident and you were pinned down to, give injections and all those things. So that is also helplessness. That induces helplessness. That induces that feeling of losing control, which are all aspects of trauma. So anytime, we all are scared of going to dentist. We don't want to see dentists because these things bring up all those memories as I'm being pinned down and somebody is doing something to me and I do not even have a single say in that, what you're doing, what you're not, and I'm being pinned down. So that reenacts, the trauma is being reenacted in this situation. And that's why, we all have that some kind of fear because our nervous system feels, oh, no, that's scary part. So we may unconsciously be carrying toxic shame. I have people coming up having this toxic shame and self-sabotaging their own growth. They don't even know that they are carrying this shame. Sometimes they are so enmeshed. That shame is so enmeshed in them that they are not even able to recognize that shame. And they've been carrying that shame and guilt. Could be from their family of origin, could be from what happened to them, could be, what they felt in those moments as a child, and now they are wounded. It becomes difficult for them to even acknowledge that shame, So what happens, the energy gets created in the body and it starts to show up psychosomatically. And how it shows up psychosomatically is you will have aches, shoulder pain, unexplained pains in different parts of the body. And now the research have proved a lot of autoimmune diseases, lots and lots of autoimmune diseases have their basis in some kind of trauma. Definitely in some kind of toxic stress. So that energy which is created, now it cannot be destroyed. It has to be released from your system. Unless it is released, it's going to show up in different parts of your body, headaches, pains, autoimmune diseases. And also learning about childhood trauma is important because we learn to uphold our boundaries. If we do not have proper attachment in childhood, we are not going to have proper boundaries. I'm going to probably when the parent treats you like an extension, of them and doesn't allow you to have your own identity. Okay, you are my son, you're going to do this. That breeds guilt in you. You learn to feel bad about anything that creates separation. Having boundaries, having your own life, and valuing your independence is seen as a threat. So somehow you internalize what your parents told you initially when as a child, that, oh, you are my child and I know you're going to, make me happy or, make my name big. And so this is called enmeshment. You are too enmeshed with the family of origin that you do not have your own authentic self out of it. So creating boundaries, even if you try to, it creates and invokes a lot of guilt in you. You don't feel comfortable. Or if you grew up feeling trapped, pressured, or a lot of control in your childhood, you may develop intense resistance and procrastination when you have an obligation or deadline to meet, because somehow it reminds you of your childhood. You feel trapped, pressured, controlled. So there is this internal resistance. There is this internal feeling to procrastinate, to delay it as much as we can if we have an obligation to meet the deadline. So keeping up boundaries for people with trauma it's extremely difficult. They find it difficult to be assertive at times. Again, so these are the things, which trauma can actually show up in different parts of your life: your solidity, wellness, adequacy, stability, security, safety, your family support, closeness, relationships, purpose, recognition, almost anything, you name it. The trauma, if there is some kind of developmental childhood relational trauma, it's going to show up in each and every aspect of these. So when we say about trauma impact, so these are general trauma impacts, cognition, impaired readiness to learn, difficulty problem solving, language delays, especially for childhood trauma, poor academic achievement. So whether we talk about brain development, especially intangibly in terms of size of the brain also, we can see the people who go through complex trauma during their childhood, the brain size is smaller. Scans have shown the brain size becomes smaller because brain is plastic. And there's less efficient processes because they can't process it. There's too much stress in their mind. And sometimes there is a change in gene expression. We call it epigenetics. We all know about it nowadays. So emotions, there is difficulty controlling and regulating emotions, trouble even recognizing, pointing out, naming their emotions. They are not able to recognize. They are not able to name it, label it. There is this feeling of helplessness, lack of control. When it comes to behavior, it's poor self-regulation. Could be aggression, could be risk-taking, drug and alcohol misuse, adolescent pregnancy, they become daredevil, they can do anything. Mental health conditions, depression, anxiety, negative self-image, low self-esteem, PTSD, suicidality. Physical health, as I mentioned to you earlier, poor immune system, shorter lifespan. Even in children, infant, because of ABAS, adverse babyhood experience, there could be infant and mother mortality and morbidity also. In relationships, as we discussed, attachment problems, disorders, which becomes the foundation for adult relationships. You are not able to hold those kind of relationships. And in terms to find out a good relationship, a secure relationship, you may be finding yourself dating the wrong guy again and again. So it's like dating the same person with a different face. And you feel that, oh my God, why me? Why am I going through all this? But without our conscious awareness, we get attracted to people somehow, somewhere, which reminds of our childhood past trauma. So it may develop into co-regulation or rescuing behavior. We don't know where it can go in your case. It could come from the space of shame. I am not loved. So, I'm not good enough and I don't deserve love. That is shame. There's something wrong in me. That is shame. But it could also move. A counterindication is pride. It may come from the space of pride. I'm happy to be a loner. I'm so happy. I don't have any relationship problems. So that's how you contraindicate that. There is a counterindication in that. So all these, the symptoms which we are talking about right now, which are conscious and which are tangible to our eyes, which we can see, could emerge from either shame, which is a toxic shame, or from pride. But both of them needs to be addressed. We cannot let it just stay there as it is. We need to work on those. So common childhood trauma responses in day-to-day life, which seem harmless, which goes unnoticed, we don't even bother about it, which is over-analyzing. Oh my God, I analyzed a lot of things, so it's good. Over-explaining ourselves. We keep on explaining, we keep apologizing, explaining ourselves. And the person may be wondering, why is she even doing it? It's okay, I understood it. There may be perfectionism. I want to show the world that I am good. So only and only if I perform, I will be recognized. I will belong only and only I am recognized for my work. So this edge, this air for perfectionism, it could also grow up to some kind of body image issues. I have to look in a certain way. If I am not in a certain weight, of certain way, if I don't look like a certain way, I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy of anything. My worth is either dependent on my looks, on my work, on my marks. All these are trauma responses. We have to understand where is this coming from, what space we are coming from. Being a micromanager, inability to say no, we overextend ourselves, we want to rescue, we want to people please, because that's what we have learned since childhood. My mom will love me if I agree to everything she says. If I help my parents will love me. So early on in childhood, I start to read my mom's eyes and I become a people pleaser and I read, oh, now she's going to be angry and I have to change my way of doing work. I pick down my homework and I sit down and start doing my homework because mom is going to be angry. So I read the signals and I start behaving like that. I start behaving like a people pleaser. I start saying it's difficult for me to say no. So in adulthood, when these things translate into my adulthood, I am someone who overextend myself. I'm not able to say, okay, this is something which is going beyond my capability, or I am tired. We just keep on taking, keep on taking, keep on taking. We avoid feelings. Workaholism, muscle tensions, anger, guilt, strong inner critic. We internalize the voices of our caregivers. Now, what I'm saying is all this list is not comprehensive. Second, how it shows up in your life could be one or two of these things, all of these things, or none of these things, which is difficult to say in this particular setting, contextually, how it is showing up for one person. That happens only in a therapy setting when we are working with one-on-one with the client. And also there is no cookie cutter approach to therapy. There is no cookie cutter approach. We may be expert in the process. So I may be expert in the process, but you are expert in your lives, right? So what you show a therapist is actually a snapshot of your life. But what happened before that and after that is there in your memory, is there in your brain. So that's why I say you are the expert of your life, and therapists just nudge you in the direction of healing. So this, I specifically put it there. I know it is academic, but this is something which everyone needs to understand, that trauma leads to some kind of dissociation. Along the spectrum of dissociation, if it is one bad event, which we call PTSD, that internally a person's being actually gets split into two people, trauma symptoms and normal self. So we have split. Doesn't mean you have a split personality, but there is a person who gets flashbacks. There is a person who avoids those kind of situations again. That is also a part of you, but a part of you gets fragmented and is fearful. So that is a fearful self and a normal self who can still go to office and work and perform, right? You are not sitting at home leaving everything, oh, I have a trauma now and I can't function. It's not like that. You can still function, and at the same time, your trauma symptoms can exist in you. So that is one single bad event if that happens. But if there are many traumas, attachment issues growing up, you split between different neural pathways. So either you panic or freeze, or there is this lot of energy of fight, flight. Normal functioning is still there. You can still sleep, eat, do your work, go to school, go to office, do all kind of work, and shutting down where you just paralyze. I am frozen, I can't do anything. And then there is early traumas and attachment disasters. We call it disasters. When there is a disaster, there are part of traumas in you which shows up in different ways. Again, it's not split personality, it just shows your functioning. So you have a protector. When you are trying to be a daredevil, the protector in you might say, oh, why you're doing it? Be careful. You don't want to repeat that. Don't be vulnerable. And sometimes I'll give you an example. There are times, you know, when I'm playing with my kids, and while I'm playing with my kids, they say something, and I go like this. What is this? This is basically the ego state which is stuck in my childhood. Oh, you don't accept me? So the state which I would have done in my childhood with my mom, it shows up when I'm playing with my kids also. So maybe a part of me gets stuck there. That energy needs to be released. Otherwise, it will keep on showing every now and then. So either these attachment disasters, whenever those happen, we get stuck in that ego state also. So that ego state needs to be healed for us to have that wholeness in us. So how childhood trauma affects us, that's what we all are here about for, you know, beliefs about self. We wanted to learn how it affects our beliefs about self. You know, of course, I'm not good enough. I have to be independent because my mom, my parents are busy. So I can be independent. I have to prove myself. I'm weird. I don't get along with people. I do not belong. So this I do not belong is specifically, you know, when you get mixed messages from your caregivers. Oh, your birth was not welcome, or probably you were not happy during your birth, or something happened during your birth, so we don't accept you as our part. So you constantly have that feeling within you. The wounded child has this feeling, the inner child has this feeling, oh, I do not belong. I'll give you an example. In my case, in India, when I was born, my birth was not celebrated because my grandparents were very conservative and they wanted to have a baby boy, but here I am. So my birth was not celebrated for initial quite a lot of years of my life. I remember I always felt I do not belong. I remember telling my mom, you know, one day I'll grow up and I'll be your son, I'll do this, I'll do that. But there was always a feeling of insufficiency. There was always a driver. I wanted to prove myself. There was always this feeling. And I remember even when I became psychotherapist, the sting of that was still there. And I told my mom, I wish my grandparents were here today to see that today I am a psychotherapist and I am doing good work and I am as good as a boy. So something like this could be a driver. You know, for all these years, that was my driver. And then we have to finally get it removed in my therapy sessions. So I also go for therapy. It's not that if I'm a psychotherapist, that doesn't make me immune to trauma. That doesn't make me any less human. We need to work on ourselves too. So if you have childhood trauma, there's this feeling of laziness and procrastination, but only because you feel trapped, as I explained to you earlier also. If you have those feelings of being trapped in a household, you become like this. How it affects your worldview. The world is not safe, people don't care, people can't be trusted, you know, people are about to, you know, pounce on you, you're not safe. All these things, you make your personal catalogs, you make your personal connections. Your close relationships, we project our past on another person. It happens automatically without your conscious awareness. So that's the irony of it. You know, even if you want to, the conscious awareness is not going to help. State of self-protections that prevents us from seeing, receiving, and accepting love. We wear an armor, you know, we put an armor on. We don't want people to, you know, come close to us. We withdraw. You know, we stay, we say, no, this is too close. The nervous system feels, oh my God, this person is coming too close to me in my emotional, you know, aura, and I want to separate myself. So there is the feeling of self-protection, putting the armor on, rejecting, rescuing. You start to rescue, because if you have been reparenting your own parent, the chances are you become a rescuer when you grow up. Same way, dependency on others, emotional abandonment in childhood. We look to our parents to parent us, but you know, we become dependent on others as we grow up also. So we become dependent on our partners to do that for us. Resistance to being vulnerable. So you don't want to be vulnerable. So these are the kind of people who can't move beyond dating phase. They are going into flings or one night stands because I don't want to be vulnerable, because being vulnerable means being weak. Staying low maintenance, so I don't want to be seen or heard, so I dim my shine so that others can shine brighter. Sabotaging relationship. Before you hurt me, I leave you. So career, self-sabotaging behavior at work, excessive analysis of one's own success, imposter syndrome. Do I even deserve this? We feel like a fraudster, saying yes when you want to say no. And your finances. So, you have these beliefs because of whatever shaped you in your childhood. Money will solve all my problems, make me happy. Money doesn't grow on trees. I have to work hard for it. You have to work your ass out for it. You cannot get it easily. Money makes you evil. If I get money, I'll be an evil person then. I'm just not good with money. I don't know how to take care of money. And that's why money doesn't stay with me. I will never make enough money. I will lose all my friends if I get rich, because rich people become bad. So all these symptoms which we have just talked about actually can broadly be put under 5 basic patterns of physiological dysregulation. So because these are adaptive survival mechanisms, but the basic patterns, whether we talk about finances, work, relationships, self-view, word view, the basic essence of this is, one is connection, dysregulation at connection level. So it is a survival style which develops around the need for contact and the fear of it. I want to contact someone, but I fear it. Then there is attunement. So this is the survival style, which develops around the conflict. The person is in the conflict between having personal needs and the rejection of them. So when my personal needs were not met, I have that misattunement within me. Then there is this trust. This is the survival style which develops around both the longing for and the fear of healthy trust and interdependence. I can't depend, because if I go close, this person might hurt me. Autonomy. This is the survival style which develops around both the desire for and the fear of setting limits and expressing independence. And last, love and sexuality. This survival style develops around wanting to be loved, to love also, but the fear of being vulnerable. It also develops around splitting of love and sexuality. So I can have sexual encounter and there is no need for love in that kind of relationship. So that is why asking what happened to you is so very important to understand what's going on with you now. Is there any way to heal and break free from one's childhood trauma? Yes. One big answer is yes, we can break free and heal from our childhood trauma. Is there any way to heal and break free? Yes. So how? One is top-down approach. We call it brain to body. It's from brain to body. First of all, accepting that the trauma happened and not denying it, because there is a lot of toxic shame in me. I don't want to look at it. I don't want to see it. So please don't even talk about it. I want to deny it. We are in denial. So accepting that trauma happened and not denying it. Getting to know and being aware of our own patterns, okay, this particular thing has led to this. And lastly, self-acceptance and compassion for the wounded child in us. Now, you may not be able to do all this on your own. Initially, you won't. You need co-regulation. You need someone to guide you through this process. You need someone to give you that safe space, that holding space, so that you can accept the trauma, first of all. Then identify your patterns, and then come to a level where you can accept yourself with that woundedness, with that humanity in you, with the child which is in pain and is crying, and extend the compassion and nurturance to that wounded child. But this approach is top down, and top down is talk therapy, brain to body. The next one is bottoms up, which we call body to brain. So research has proved that 80% of the data which moves in our body is from the afferent nerves, which is from brain to body. And only 20% of the data goes from brain to body. It's 80% from body to brain. It starts from body to brain, from my gut to my brain. That's when we say, oh, my gut feels like this. I have this intuitiveness, I have this intuition that something is going wrong. It's like it's your threat detector, natural threat detector in your body. So you can pick up. So now if something drops here, automatically I'll reorient myself and check what happened. We will check. So that is our natural reflex of checking what's going on, reorienting ourselves in the moment. And that is our natural threat detector. So 80% of the data which travels to our brain is via body, is from body. So how do we do that bottoms up approach? We have psychotherapy with a trauma-informed lens, which involves EMDR, eye movement desensitization reprocessing, which involves brain spotting, which involves trauma release exercises, which involves somatic work. In all these modalities, You may not need it, your therapist may know it, but all these modalities actually use your body as a friend, as an ally, to help alleviate whatever symptoms, whatever trauma is playing up in your life. So we use body as our friend. So healing happens when there is bottoms up approach and when there is top down approach, both, and when there is integration of both. We need both. You cannot just talk your way out of trauma. If I keep talking to you, it's not going to help you. You may get aware of your patterns, but you may not be able to sustain the benefit and translate that knowledge and embody it in your practical day-to-day life. You will not be able to. For that, we have to go for bottoms-up approach, which is somatic work, trauma release exercises, brain spotting, eye movement desensitization, reprocessing. If I may show you, this is the brain. So when we talk about EMDR, brain spotting, TRE, and somatic work, it actually accesses this emotional brain, which is quite deep down in our brain. And when we are just talking to you, what I'm doing to you from last 1 hour is talking. I'm engaging your rational brain, which is the front part, prefrontal cortex. But when we do the bottoms-up approach, we go into these midbrain, which is subcortical brain, where all the emotions, memories, and feelings are stored. And then there is brain step, where there is body sensations. This also comes under body to brain. Healing happens when there is healing at all 3 levels of brain, which is your thoughts, your emotions, and your sensations. If I keep talking to you, I will not heal you and you will not get healed. It has to be at talking level, rational brain, prefrontal cortex, subcortical, emotional brain, which understand the language of emotions, memories, feelings, and your brainstem, which understands the language of your body sensations. Like, anxiety, we all know. How do we know we are anxious? When our heart is beating faster, right? When our heart is beating faster, we have sweaty palms, we feel nauseous, all those things. And lastly, learning to self-regulate through co-regulation. So you need a help of a therapist in that case, and building one's own toolkit going forward as a resource which you can use. So you gradually get to learn how to self-regulate via co-regulation in the therapy session. So this is the neuroaffective relational model of healing cycle, which starts with increasing awareness of your survival style, inquiry into the identity, disidentification from shame or pride, self-hatred, self-rejection, and judgments goes down, reconnection with core needs and capacity. This chart has to be read in a clockwise way, from bottom up. In this self-reinforcing cycle, each step builds upon the previous and makes the next one possible. And the cycle keeps on repeating. You see, the last one is greater capacity for self-regulation. And again, the cycle keeps on repeating. And as the clients continue to move towards reintegrating their core capacities and life force. So with this, if you have no buttons to push, you are powerful. If you are triggerless, you are limitless. So this is my urge to each one of you. If you identify that there is something which is pulling you back in any way, and you recognize that there is something which you can, work on and heal, please go for it. Please do it. Go to any therapist, especially who can integrate both the modalities, top down, bottoms up, because I can guarantee I have seen both the sides. I have seen this side where there is darkness, where there is illness, where there is no health, where there is no joy, there is no vitality, to somewhere where I'm whole, where there is vitality, where there is life. And not just for me, I'm able to, probably go out and talk about it openly without feeling any kind of toxic shame or pride, and probably pulling people out of it also. So please, 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 this is so powerful. If you are triggerless, you are limitless. So over to you, Winnie. I know I was like, I'm over time now.
Thank you so much, Navroop. You're incredible. I think it's a very powerful talk. This is such an important topic, and I want to thank you for making this information accessible and tangible for so many, so that we can try to work towards our collective healing. Now let's get questions going. We've already had a few questions lining up. So this one is from an anonymous attendee. I reflex very badly when someone touches my neck, even if I was expecting it. I asked my mom if I was choked as a baby. She said she doesn't know she said she didn't know, but I still think something must have happened. I remember crying in high school whenever someone would rest their hand on my shoulder because it's too close to my neck and I didn't want the hand to end up on my neck. Is there a way I can work on it, although I don't know where it comes from?
Dear Anonymous, thank you for this question. I'm glad that you asked about it. And yes, we can work on this. Even without you conscious remembering about it, it's still there in this part of the brain. It's still there in this part of the brain. It's there. It's there. This part remembers, and we can still work on this part. So here there is emotion. What you are coming from is the body sensation. Someone touches my neck, there is this sensation, stay away from me. So there's something here. We can still work even if you have fragmented or no memory of it. So we have these kind of modalities which can help you to come out of that trauma. There is definitely a trauma, guaranteed. When you're saying it, I can hear it. It's there. Trauma is there, and there is a way out, definitely. So, but it needs to be worked somatically from your brainstem, because the trauma, when trauma is happening, it is stored as sensations, emotions, and thoughts. This is the way it goes down. This is how trauma gets stored in your body. And when trauma is healed, it will again come up from the same way. So again, you will have the same feelings, sensations, and emotions, but this time you're not alone. You are in a safe space with your therapist, and your therapist would hold your hand to help you compassionately come out of it. I hope I answered it.
Thank you. That's great to know. And this one's from Haley. Can attachment styles affect other aspects of our lives? Say, how we interpret novel events and how we study or provide support to others?
Definitely. There's so many aspects, again, it becomes contextual when somebody, talk to me, or we are in that setting where we can pinpoint exactly how it can affect. But definitely attachment styles can have that permeability into all aspects of our life, especially in terms of, if we talk about even addictions, addiction is actually an attempt to have secure attachment, which goes wrong because that's an inanimate thing and that is addictive. So whether someone is using alcohol, it's an attempt to have a secure attachment. So definitely attachment style affects your boundaries, how you interpret events, how you read things, how you get connected to other people in life, and how you basically show up in life has lot coming from the foundation of your attachment style. Yes.
Thank you. And Michael is asking, can you please expand on closure? Say, how do you successfully close if you are agitated towards a child? And what does that mean? And what can you do if a child doesn't ever experience closure?
Okay, so I'm assuming that you're talking about something which has already happened. So if something has already happened in terms of closure, that needs to be cleared. You can bring the child, and if it is not too damaging and it is not too much in the past and it was not consistent, you can probably make the child sit and talk to him, explain him, this is what happened. I'm so sorry. And I was in not a great state of mind that time, and I didn't come across that way. And I'm so sorry about that. But remember, mommy loves you. Remember, papa, daddy loves you. I'm with you, and it's not your fault. It was mommy's fault. Mama just blew off. I'm so sorry for that. Because we have to understand the child prefrontal cortex, their thinking brain, their rational brain is not developed until the age of 25 years. So when we shout at them and when we say, hey, you don't understand, actually they don't understand. They don't understand. The poor child is not able to understand. And then they think, oh, it's my flaw. I'm always being this way to mommy. There's something wrong with me. I'm flawed. I'm wrong. I'm not a good boy. And then he's constantly beating himself. And these are the children which eventually develop strong inner critic, because they internalize all those things. They keep on thinking that why I'm not being a good boy to mommy and daddy.
Thank you. Hearing that actually warmed my heart. And I think I do want to respect everyone's time. So let's take 3 more questions. This one's from Brenton. So would you have any suggestions regarding which direction or which therapy to approach for a child of 7 who has gone through trauma?
Okay, definitely again, both integrative approach, which is bottoms up and top down. So you have to find a therapist who is good in somatics, who is good in this part of the healing, this part of the brain, the subcortical and the brainstem, which comes from somatics, and also talk therapy. So the starting point could be someone who has some experience with children, and is it a somatic experiencing practitioner or trauma EMDR practitioner. Brain spotting works well with kids also. 7 years old can do brain spotting very well. And TRE is also something which can be, we can do TRE with children also. So all these, whatever I have discussed, is suitable for kids also. The only way we approach that is, we use child-friendly language.
Thank you for your comments. And next one, I feel like more and more trauma is intergenerationally transferred with very little to fix it. How do we expect generations to improve? And when does understanding and addressing and hopefully changing surpass the avalanche of pain on a social level? And would it ever be possible?
Yes, it is possible. It is possible. Darling, you don't have to heal all the generations. You have to just heal yourself. Because once you heal yourself, you will be the cycle breaker. And the new generations will not have to bear the pain and the baggage of that past trauma. So it stops with you. So you do it for yourself. And when you are healed, you become the cycle breaker. You bring the healing to people who are behind you. Maybe your grandmom, maybe your mom, maybe your dad. You bring healing to them. And once they see you in that situation, once they feel that compassion in you, once they see you that you're on the other side of the tunnel where you are healed, they get intrigued too. They want to get that feeling too. And then you invoke that sense in them. Okay, that's possible. That's possible. Let's do it. Right? So it starts with you. I would suggest work on yourself, bring that love and compassion for yourself. You also have a lot of coming through epigenetics, that trauma. But I have to tell you one more thing. Your ancestors survived. So if trauma is intergenerational, my dear, resilience is also intergenerational. So you have got all that resilience from your ancestors too, which you can pass on to your upcoming lineage too.
Thank you. Let's take one last question. This one is from Cecile. This one is made up of 2 mini questions. How can we start exploring ourselves to see what trauma we might be carrying unconsciously?
Okay, so what we do usually, Vinny, is when people, you don't have to do it alone, because sometimes it could be too triggering for us and we don't want to push you in that direction. So that is why I started this webinar with this disclaimer. You might get emotional, you might get triggered. All these things might surface for you. So my suggestion would be, if you recognize some patterns, or if you find yourself getting triggered, giving knee-jerk reactions, giving exaggerated responses, there is something in past which is disturbing and is interfering in your present. See yourself, get yourself to a therapist. Asking for help is not a shame. It is available. Help is available. We have good therapists all around. So seek out help, and your therapist will help you identify where it is showing up in your life. So I have people coming up for intensive sessions. I do online therapy. I see people in person in Singapore. So we give them a chart, and it is all the trauma responses, which we can think of, the list of all the trauma responses, and we ask them to identify at least the 4 which is showing up in their life right now, and then help them in the process, top down, bottoms up, and release that residual energy, that frozen ego state in their body. We help them release from their bodies also and from their mind, and that's how the healing is embodied. And it becomes reflexive. It's not a thought of thing. I'll give one quick example, Vinny. Please allow me to do that, because that'll make things very easy for everyone to understand. So, if you touch a hot pot, you instantly pull back your hand, right? You don't think, oh my God, this pot is hot. Should I pull my hand? Should I, withdraw or not? You don't think. You do not have time for all this. It's a reflex. You just, remove your hand from that. Same way, we want that healing. to become embodied in your body. It becomes your persona. You don't have to think, oh, now this person who's my boss, he's probably talking to me like that. I'm reminded of my dad, and now I have to take a pause and talk to him nicely. No, you don't have time for all this. You don't. We want your healing to be reflexive in your body so that it comes so naturally. And sometimes when you're healed and you start showing up in a different way, what happens is the people around you get surprised. You yourself get shocked and you say, oh my God, what did I just do? How did I manage to stand up for myself? I have never done that in my life. But more disconfirming experiences you have after you have embodied it, the more new neural pathways will start to show up. New neurons will fire in your brain, and you will have neuroplasticity towards resilience.
Okay.
So that is what I mean when you are getting your own self-regulatory toolkit going forward. So what a therapist is doing is actually empowering you to build your own toolkit of regulations. We don't want clients to be dependent on us for years and years. We want our clients to be empowered and just go on with their lives.
Yes. Yes, I agree with you. And the second half of this question is, what are some things we can start doing in our everyday life to address our traumas?
This is something which is very close to my heart. Something which you, if you really, really want to do, it may not come that easy, but I want you to accept and nurture your inner child. I want you to accept that this thing happened and it was not your mistake. I want you to accept that you are not to be blamed. Trauma happened. Extend that compassion to your inner child. If you cannot think nice things about yourself, I urge you to go back to your childhood memories, go back to your old albums, find a photograph of yours where when you were 3-year, 2-year, 1-year, 4-year-old, make that as your wallpaper of your mobile or your laptop. Look at that little innocent child. And just be nice to that person. Just be nice to that child. It's gone through a lot. Come on, let's give some compassion, love, and nurturance to that inner child. Accept that inner child and be that parent which he actually craved for. So a lot of self-compassion, a lot of self-acceptance, a lot of self-love.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Navroop. And thanks again for this very informative session. And I feel so much of the content today is relatable, and we want to pass this on to many more people. Because I mean, you never know the struggle someone is dealing with at the moment or every day. It's so important to spread love and understanding. So I feel it's much needed, especially now in the world. And thank you everyone for staying with us. Please take care of yourself, everyone.
Just one last minute, Winnie, because I didn't thank all my participants. So thank you so much for your amazing questions and your participation and staying with us till the end of this session. So I'm extremely honored and grateful to all of you. And if you want to reach out to us, probably you can reach out to me on healwithnav.com, which is HEALWITHNAV.com, healwithnav.com. That's my website address. Thank you very much. Stay safe.
Thank you. Stay safe, everyone. Bye.